All right, folks. Hello and welcome back to Online English Class. Today, we are going to be preparing for Unit 5 test, which we're going to be taking near the end of this week. It will either be on Thursday or Friday, depending on how quickly we get through the information that we have in front of us. It will most likely be this Thursday. I'll send the test home on Thursday, and you will send me your completed copy of the test by Friday at 3 p.m. Okay, so that's how that procedure will go. When I'm assigning the test, I'll explain that procedure in a little more detail. But for now, what we're going to be doing after we talk a little bit about just some reminders, we're just going to be spending today a little bit of shortened class period in which I'm going to give you some time to work and to think intentionally after a few important reminders about your sonnet. Okay, so today I am sort of scheduling, I'm carving this day out to schedule intentionally for sonnet drafting. Now, the downside of the extended cancellation and the extended spring break is that we are not going to be able to work on any of Samuel Taylor Coleridge. But even so, your reading check for Samuel Taylor Coleridge's work was due yesterday by 3 p.m. You should have sent me an email indicating that you completed that reading, and many of you did an excellent job of getting me that email. Okay, so good on you. Remember, vocabulary is still off. You don't have any new reading this week, but you will, beginning next week, start to read the novel 1984 by George Orwell. So you will need to come into school, and I'll send an email to this effect later. All right, this is not going to be your only reminder by any means that you need to do this, but by the beginning of next week, you need to have a copy of George Orwell's 1984. Now, if you feel more comfortable ordering your own during this period of time, feel free. You can do that. I don't care. But I have a stack of copies here. You can come pick one up and leave. All right, we won't high five or hang out and play Mario Kart or anything like that. Okay, so continue drafting your sonnet and make sure that you are preparing for your Unit 5 test. Tomorrow, on Wednesday, we'll be talking more about the analytical portion of the test. Today, we're going to be discussing the creative portion of the test, the sonnet portion of the test. Okay. All right, so let's return to your review guide. The review guide for Honors and Regular English 2 is attached on RenWeb. If you have not downloaded this attachment and you have not begun to engage with this at all, then today is the day. All right, make sure that you download this attachment today. The first portion of your test will be your completed Italian sonnet, as we've already discussed last Thursday. There are two major categories that it's going to be graded on. I'm going to remind you of this quickly. Okay, this is the second time I've explained this. First area, rhyme scheme. Second area, meter. Third area, structure. All right, second major criteria, meaning and clarity. Okay, first subcategory of meaning and clarity, subject and theme. Does your poem take up a clear subject and develop a clear main idea about that subject? And finally, number 2, is your writing clear? Okay, so let's talk about each aspect of this grading scale with a sample sonnet, with an example sonnet. All right, and we're going to use a pretty good one, all right, written by John Milton. He probably would have gotten a pretty good grade on the Unit 5 test. But I just want to show you, I just want to reiterate for anyone out there who's not quite sure what I mean by each one of these different categories. I want to reiterate it by looking at a specific example. Okay, so we're going to look at one of my favorite sonnets, my personal favorite sonnets. We've already looked at this in this class once. Sonnet 19 by John Milton, called When I Consider How My Light Is Spent, about the fact that John Milton was going blind in the middle of his life. Okay, so first thing that we need to pay attention to if we are writing an Italian sonnet is rhyme scheme. Okay, what is the rhyme scheme, the standard rhyme scheme for an Italian sonnet? Well, we should know this by now. It is A, B, B, A. All right, in the first 4 lines, we would call it a quatrain. All right, and then another set of lines, A, B, B, A. So this A sound is the same as this A sound, all right? It's not a new sound, it's the same A sound. So you're working with 2 sounds in these first 8 lines, and we call these first 8 lines the octet, all right? And then, all right, there you get up to 3 more sounds, C, D, E, or C, D, C, and then it can go C, D, E, or CDC. It can also go CDE, EDC. All right. So you can play with these 3 sounds in whatever sort of pattern that you want. It has to be a pattern. Okay. So it can't be CC, DD or CCDE. ED. Right. That would be that wouldn't follow the pattern. That would break the conventional structure. So you get to play with those sounds, but you need to structure them and organize them somehow logically. Okay, so let's look at John Milton's rhyme scheme. Okay, so in his first 4 lines, when I consider how my life is spent, ere half my days in this dark world and wide. Okay, we're introduced to our A sound, the int sound, and then our B sound, the I'd sound. Okay, so int and I'd. These are good sound selections. You want to know why? Because there's a lot of words in English that rhyme with those words. Okay, so you've got some room to work with. All right, if your first line ends with the word orange, then you haven't really given yourself much opportunity for rhyming. Okay, not a lot of words rhyme with orange. Okay, in English language. So where does he go from here, right? So he goes int, I'd, hide, all right, there's our B sound again, and then bent, back to our A sound. Now notice we go back to our A sound, present, all right, that's the same as spent, int, all right, is the core sound that's being repeated there. Int, chide, denied, prevent, all right, so here this constitutes Milton's octet. The first 8 lines, which are structured in A, B, B, A fashion, A, B, B, A fashion. All right. Now let's look and see what he does in his sestet. All right, with his up to 3 sounds that he has to work with. He transitions to need and est and ate. All right. So is ed, est, and ate up here? No. So right, you can't repeat these sounds in your sestet. You move on to different sounds, right? So in the same way the poem's in the same way the poem shifts its tone, so does it shift the sounds that the rhyme scheme is based on. Okay, so we move to ed, est, and ate here, right? And then we go ed, est, and ate. All right, so CDE, CDE. For a perfect A, B, B, A rhyme scheme, A, B, B, A rhyme scheme, CDE, CDE rhyme scheme. Has Milton done his job with respect to rhyme scheme? Yes, not surprisingly. He's a pretty good poet. All right, what about meter? Okay, well, the conventional meter for an Italian sonnet is iambic pentameter. Okay, let's write that down really quick. Iambic pentameter. Okay, now, iambic pentameter refers to the pattern of stresses and slacks and number of feet in a line. This is the meaning of meter. Remember, and you will be fine. All right. So the number of feet in a line for an iambic pentameter line is 5. 5 total feet. All right. Now, what is a foot of poetry? Well, it is typically in English poetry, disyllabic combination of disyllabic meaning two syllables, a two-syllable combination, all right, that when put together, 5 times 2 equals 10 total syllables. Okay, so for each line, you have 10 syllables to work with. Now, this is part of the challenge of sonnet writing. This is why I make you do this, because it makes you engage. It makes you engage in the editing process really, really, really intensely. All right, you got to select your words even more intently and even more intentionally than you normally would in an essay writing process. Okay, so let's look at his meter. When I, that's an I am, consider how my light is spent. How many syllables do we have here? Well, without counting them up one by one, I'll tell you, 10. And how are those syllables structured? When I consider how my light is spent. That rising meter is what we call iambic. So, I cannot write and talk at the same time. Okay, iambic. How many total syllables do we have? 10. Okay, how many feet do we have? 5. Is this written in iambic pentameter? Yes. Does he continue to follow this pattern throughout the course of the poem? Yes, he does. So, how is Milton doing on our second major convention for our form, our meter convention? He's doing quite well. All right, not surprising. What about overall structure? What do I mean by structure? I'm just talking about the relationship between the major sections of the poem, which we refer to as the octet and the sestet. All right, which needs to have a volta or a tone shift between the two. Now, conventionally in Italian sonnet, the octet raises a question, and the sestet answers the question, or an octet raises a concern, and the sestet resolves the concern in some way. All right, so in Milton's octet, has he raised a concern? Well, the answer to that is yes. In fact, he has directly, literally asked a question. Okay, when I consider how my light is spent, when I consider the fact that I'm going blind, before half my days are over, when I'm walking through this dark world, this dark and wide world, and that one talent, that one skill that I have, okay, that one gift that I have, my ability to write, which is death to hide, okay, an allusion to the parable of the talents, lodged with me useless. In other words, my best talent is buried within me. I can't use it. Though my soul more bent to serve therewith my Maker. In other words, even though I want to serve my Maker with my talent and present my true account to show what I'm really capable of, lest he returning chide. Chide means to punish or to reprove, right? To come back and say, like a mother would come back and say to her son who didn't do his chores, right? Doth God exact day labor, light denied, I fondly ask. Okay, so he's afraid that God's going to come back and he's going to say, well, John Milton, why did you bury the talent that I gave you? Why didn't you use it to show me, to manifest my glory? That's why I gave you the talent, right? Milton says, does God exact day labor from those who he denies light to? Okay, right? So has he raised a question in his octet? Yes. The question is, why, essentially, why has God taken away my sight when my sight is the fundamental thing that I need in order to use my talent well? Okay. Well, in the sestet, does he answer this question? Yes. That murmur soon replies, God doth not need either man's work or his own gifts, who best bear his mild yoke, they serve him best. His state is kingly, thousands at his bidding speed, and post o'er land and ocean without rest. And they also serve him who stand and wait. All right? So, how does he answer the question? He says, God doesn't need my work. those that serve God best are those who bear his mild yoke. All right. So, how does Milton use both an octet and a sestet? Does he have a volta, a kind of turning point in the poem? Yes. So we have 3 checks for Milton. Good job. Now, what else am I going to be grading? Well, subject and theme and clarity of writing. Let's talk first about clarity of writing, okay? So even though you're writing a poem, you still need to write sentences that make sense, all right? So let me give you a quick example, right, of the sentence structure of this poem, right? So first, Milton says, when I consider how my light is spent before half my days in this dark world and wide, and that one talent which is death to hide, lodged with me useless, though my soul more bent to serve therewith my Maker, and present my true account, lest he returning chide. Okay, that's a really long run-on sentence, okay, so it's poetry where we've got some looser strictures about grammar, but basically, all right, what he is saying in this first very long series of phrases and clauses is, when I consider that I'm going blind, I tend to ask this question: doth God exact day labor for those who he denies light to or sight to, right? Okay, so the whole octet is one sentence long, and it's all one big question that he asks. So the subordinate clause is, when I do this, and the independent clause is, I do this, right? I ask this, okay? Now, look at the syntactical structure of the sestet. But patience, to prevent that murmur, soon replies, comma, quotation. This is Patience speaking, his own internal patience. God doth not need either man's work or his own gifts. Who best bear his mild yoke, they serve him best, period. All right? Again, the semicolon. A semicolon is used in between 2 independent clauses. This is an independent clause, and this is an independent clause. His state is kingly, period. Thousands at his bidding speed, and post o'er land and ocean without rest. They also serve him who only stand and wait, period, in quotation. All right. So, can you end a sentence in the middle of a line in a poem, in a sonnet? Yes, absolutely. Check it out. Milton just did it right there. Okay, he did it again right there. So you don't have to end your sentences at the end of a line. All right, and your each line doesn't have to be a sentence long. Okay, that's definitely not something that you need. Okay, so in terms of clarity of writing, make sure that you are using basic conventions of grammar and punctuation effectively throughout the course of your sonnet. All right, and finally, make sure that your sonnet develops is about a clear subject. What's the subject of Milton's poem? Well, it's about his oncoming blindness. He's going blind as he's writing this, which would be a terrible experience, by the way, especially for a writer, okay, especially for someone who has written some of the greatest poetry in the entire English language, including Paradise Lost, famous, excellent piece of epic poetry in the English canon. All right, and then finally, does it develop a theme? Does it have a main idea that is discernible? Yes. All right, it's not just about the fact that he's going blind. It is meditating on how that blindness leads him to deeper, better understanding of the God that he serves, and that God's sovereignty and power over all things, including individuals who he seems to have given a gift and then inhibited them from using, which is a very frustrating kind of experience, but it's also very relatable. Okay? All right. So, I just wanted to take this time to show you these examples of Milton's success in all of these areas of the sonnet that I'm going to be grading your particular sonnet on. If you have any questions about your sonnet in particular, feel free to email me, and I'll get back to you as I can. All right? Have an excellent day.